Well, it's good to see you on this holy Sabbath day. I want to say a word of thanks to our handbell choir. You are wonderful. We appreciate you. And our choir, what a beautiful, beautiful song. It was so pretty, beautiful. Nathan Frank's parents are here. I see you out in the congregation. He's doing a good job. I want you to know. And we are enjoying him immensely. Yes. He has an A+ so far. Oh, me. I also want you to know that the world is mourning the death of Dr. Fred Craddock. You've heard him mentioned from this pulpit many times. Ministers all over the world quote him. He died over the weekend. His service is tomorrow at his beloved Cherry Log Church near Blue Ridge, Georgia. He was considered one of the 12 best preachers in the English-speaking world. And he was a professor at the Candler School of Theology and a dear friend of my family's. And he will be greatly missed. Well, what song do you sing when you're working? You might not be able to sing out loud, but what is going on in your mind? Or when you're working around the house or outside. Now, on Saturdays, when I was growing up, Saturday mornings we had to get up early and do our chores. And we did them early in the fall so we could go to UGA games. You know, I loved it. When I was growing up, Georgia always played around noon or 1, somewhere in there, and you go and you get home, plenty of time for supper and church the next day. It's not like that anymore. But we'd have to get up early. If the grass needed cutting, I had to cut the grass. I was the shoe polisher of the family. I'd get Dad's shoes, all the shoes that needed polishing, I would polish the shoes and everything. And you know, my dad, I told you my dad loved to sing, but he didn't have a voice. It was horrible. Dad could not carry a tune in a bucket. And no one ever told me after the early service where this song comes from, but Dad would always go around singing, "Whistle While You Work." And he would whistle. Dad loved to whistle. That's from a movie? Is it from a movie, Whistle While You Work? Is that from Snow White? Okay, I didn't know that. Well, Snow White's another one, you know. They always sing going off to work. What is it? Hi-ho, it's off to work we go. But Dad would always sing that, and he only knew one line of the song, "Whistle while you work. When hearts are high, the time will fly. So whistle while you work." I hated that song. I just have to tell you, I hated it. Then The Sound of Music came out, and that was even worse. In every job that must be done, there's an element of fun, you know. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, you know that. And they all, what? Was that Mary Poppins? What'd I say? Sound of Music. Mary Poppins. Well, Julie Andrews was in both of them, whichever one, you know. Whatever she was in. That was Mary Poppins that made the sugar. Okay, yeah. I didn't like that one either. So anyway, but we need a song. What's your song you sing when you're working? Well, won't you know the season of Lent is a season of cleansing, to cleaning out. We work to clean out everything that hinders us from Jesus Christ living in our lives. Recently, well, it happened last April. It's been almost a year ago. We had tremendous damage in our basement. Nothing that we caused, of course, but it was a horrible thing, and we had to bring everything from the basement up into the house. And it has just been finished. They've just finished. It takes insurance a while, you know, to do all the stuff needs to. But we have new carpet and all that down there. It's very nice. They've redone the basement. But we had to get people to help us bring all that stuff up into our house. And you know what we discovered? There's a lot of clutter in basements. A lot of clutter. And there were all these things, and we were going, Kenny and I looked at each other, why do we have that? Why do we keep this? And we thought, when the basement is finished, it's bright and shining, we don't want all that stuff to go back down there. We have gotten rid of stuff. We had the Goodwill, the trash, and then what we wanted to, you know, pack back up and keep. And you go down in the basement now, and it's so clean and nice. And you know what I've discovered is when there's less clutter, it makes for greater breathing. You breathe better when there's not so much clutter. Your mind is at ease more when you're not cluttered. And it opens the way to new perspectives. Well, in the text today, Jesus is on his way to celebrate the Passover. And for Jews, they had to go to the temple. And when he arrives to worship, the temple looks like a garage sale that's going on. People were selling doves and sheep for sacrifices in the temple. Money changers were there. And Jesus gets very angry. This is a scripture that most people have a hard time with Jesus. He doesn't just get angry. He gets cords together like a whip, and he whips to get all the animals out of the temple. And he turns the tables over, the money changers. And for the first time, the disciples see a fierceness on his face and the veins popping out of his neck. He's angry. Why was he so angry? Because you see, it was hospitality to have doves and sheep for sale, for sacrifices, because people, the Jews, came from all different countries to the temple to celebrate Passover. And they couldn't bring all their animals and doves with them or they'd die along the journey. So they were there to be purchased. They didn't all have the same currency, so they needed to be able to swap their currency. And there needed to be money changers. But not in the temple. Not in the temple. Outside of the temple, yes, not inside of it. They were causing people not to be able to worship God. It was a distortion of what the temple and its purpose. You see, the temple was the citadel of meaning in that society. Think about in Jesus' day, there weren't a lot of tall buildings, but the temple stood out. And it was the expression of all that was good and true and beautiful. The ultimate hope and desire of the people for the presence of God. And all that was going on inside of it was distorting that. They were blocking people from hearing the good news that God loved them and God forgives us. And Jesus was angry about it. He wasn't against the money changers and the people who were selling. He wanted them to probably come back in and worship. He just wasn't going to tolerate it in the temple. The temple, you see, was sacred space. Sacred means to be set apart for something for God. Now look at the Bible. This is just a book, isn't it? It's just a book with pages and words in it. But it's the church that gave us this book, and the church said, this is to be set apart from all other books. It is to be used as the textbook of the church. We don't let children throw Bibles around. Why? We don't just destroy it. We hold it in close to us because it is set aside as something of God, something we're to take seriously. When I was growing up, I was one of 4 children, and my mother never wanted the Sabbath to be chaotic. So we always put our clothes out. She would go in and help us get our clothes out on Saturday night. They were Sunday clothes. I never wore those clothes during the week. They were the clothes I wore on Sunday. And we called them Sunday clothes. Mother said, get your Sunday clothes ready. They were clothes set aside for a special purpose. Now, I don't know how it is in your house or how you were growing up. When I was growing up, the living room and dining room were set aside as special places, special rooms. You didn't just act any way you wanted in the living room or dining room. You know what was on the coffee table in the living room? All through my parents growing up, on their coffee table was the family Bible. And that was very sacred. And they would read to us from that Bible on special occasions. We all had our own Bibles that we would read during the week. But that Bible was the family Bible. And we could go in and open it and see where our names were written. our relatives and the family tree, things that were special to Mother and Daddy, they kept in there. We didn't eat in the dining room every week either, just on special occasions and on Sundays. We always ate in the dining room on Sundays. And Mother would use her special things, her silver. She would serve the fried chicken on silver platters, not during the week. She used her fine linens and her fine china. And when we went into the dining room, we behaved differently than when we were in the breakfast room, at the breakfast table. I had a sister that always wanted to eat with her leg up, with her knee kind of right here on the table. And my parents were always getting on to her, and they would say that we couldn't put our elbows on the table. They would say, Dee, strong and able, get your elbow off the table. This is not a horse's stable. This is a first-class dining table. Do you remember that? Did you ever hear that? Never heard that? I'll write it down for you sometime. You need that. It's not a horse's stable. It's a first-class dining table. You didn't put your elbows on the table. You didn't put your leg in the chair. You didn't act just any way. It was set aside, for that was special. I worry that in our homes we've lost a sense of the sacred. Where in your home do your children go for prayer, for scripture? Do you have a place set aside? Set aside that's a holy and sacred place. I worry that we've forgotten the sacredness of Sabbath. The Exodus reading with the 10 Commandments. You shall keep the Sabbath holy. One day set aside by God for us to rest, set aside. There's that word again, sacred, set aside. What you going to do today? Wonder how many of you will go home and take a nap. How many of you will really rest and be regenerated? After today, you probably will take a nap. I know. I'm so glad you are all here. I didn't know if anybody had set their clocks right. We're tired. Well, one day, can we not take one day, set aside the special? What about our churches? I think our churches today, and it bothers me deeply, you know this is something that pains my heart. I think the church today in America has lost a sense of the sacred. I have to tell you, one of our well-known ministers in our community wrote an article for the AJC, and I highly disagreed with it. I was upset by it, bothered me tremendously. And to be honest and be perfectly blunt, he was wrong. He was wrong. And you know what he said about his church? That his church was a true Jesus church because Jesus did away with the temple. And churches shouldn't be like the temple of Jesus' day, because he got rid of it. Jesus is the temple, and that's all it should be. And when you go in that church, I've preached in that church. Most difficult church I've ever tried to preach in my whole life. And I want to tell you, it looks like a warehouse. There is nothing in that church that's got a cross, that's got the liturgical colors, that has an altar table, that has candles, that has nothing, no stained glass windows, nothing that reminds you of the life of Jesus Christ. He said Jesus got rid of the temple. And you know what I want to say to him? You didn't do your homework before you wrote this article. Do you remember when Jesus was 12 years of age? He was with his family and they were traveling, and they got way on down the road, a day's journey, and they realized he wasn't with them, and they had to go back. And where did they find him? They found him in the temple. And what did he say? Did you not know that I would be in my Father's house? He didn't get rid of the temple. Jesus preached in the temple. He taught in the temple. He had his disciples to observe people in the temple. He didn't get rid of it. How dare anyone say that a church like this, Jesus did away with it? They don't know what they're talking about. Jesus didn't get rid of it. We are people who come together differently than the world. On Sundays, we come together differently than what the world does. We come to worship. We speak differently from the world. We should act differently from the world. We should give differently from the world. I'm so thankful Jeff Watkins gave the report from where we are financially. I want you to understand something. I hear people say, well, all the church is interested in is money. That is not true. I hope none of you will ever say that. Nor does this church make money off people. We're not in the business of trying to make money off of people. What I want you to know is that money in the church is sacred because it represents you and me, our lives. It's as if we put our whole bodies in the offering plate. It is our lives given to God. We need to teach our children about money and what part of each dollar goes to God. Now, I'm going to give you a figure that he didn't give you. Last Sunday, Jenna Kennedy, our children's minister, told the children, you all fill out a pledge card. We had 100 children to fill out a pledge card. That's not part of the numbers that he gave you. Over 100 children. Isn't that wonderful? We need to teach them that out of 10 dimes, one of those dimes goes to God. It's set aside. It's sacred. That dime is sacred because it represents our love for God. But you see, when Jesus goes in the temple and he throws the tables over and gets the animals out and all that, the people are in shock. Who was this stranger, Jesus, coming in and upsetting the tables? And they asked the wrong question. You know what they asked Jesus? Did you pay close attention? By what authority? Can you show us by what authority you're doing this? That's what they asked. I have to tell you, there are times I'm not the policeman of the church. I don't ever like to correct anyone in the church. But there are times I have to say something. I'll see a child without a parent running around the church somewhere, and I say, "Where's your mom and dad? You know you cannot be in here without your parents." Who told you you could say that to me? I've had that said to me. By what authority? How many times has someone said that to you? I had a preschool parent park right in front of the door of the church. I was coming in, I saw her going in, and I said, "Ma'am, I'm not the policeman of the church, but that's a fire hazard. We can't leave. You can't leave your car there." Who told you? I can't do that. Only going to be a minute or two. You know what the right question would have been for the people to ask Jesus? What have we done wrong? What have we done wrong? That's the question. What have we done wrong? We live in a society that we think we never do anything wrong. How dare anyone think, I have done something wrong? Because I am who I am, I should be able to park my car in the drive-thru. I should be able to run without a parent in the church. I should be able to do whatever I want. Because I'm never wrong. We don't like to be wrong. Just ask a teacher. I feel so sorry for teachers in our society. How many teachers are here? Raise your hand. Oh, do you know what I'm talking about? I expect an amen after this. How many teachers get the parents in their rooms and it's all your fault instead of the child's? Where's our policeman? Well, his wife's here. I wonder, I just want to know how many times Richard has pulled someone over where they rolled down the window and said, "Officer, what did I do wrong? Help me understand." Y'all were laughing because they don't do that. We roll the window down and go, "I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you pulling me over? Go get the real criminals." That's what I hear. Go get the real criminals. I didn't do anything wrong. No. Poor coaches, umpires, referees, they're always wrong. They're always wrong. What are we doing wrong? How many of you reflect every day at the end of the day? You look back over your day. Do you ask yourself, have I hurt anyone today? What have I done wrong today? What have I done right? We want to confess what we've done right so that we can, not in a bragging way, but say, "Oh, you know, I was proud that I could do something like that," so we can do more of it. But one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, what have we done wrong? So that we can get that impurity out of us, so that we can be clean and pure. What needs to be driven out of our lives? What do we need to see differently? Where do we need to move away from our comfort zone? Where do we need to move away from our comfort zone? If Jesus came through the doors of the church today, what would he drive out of this church or the church in general? That's the question I've been wrestling with this week. If Jesus walked through the doors today and he had a wheel, what would he drive out of us today? You know one of the things I think he'd drive out are our schedules. By the way, this clock says it's 11:03. We're going to go by this clock today. I just thought y'all ought to know that. One of the things he would drive out, I think, are our schedules, our busy schedules. We're just too busy. We're just too busy. And I think a part of that is for too many people, Sunday worship is an option. I think he would drive that idea out of our minds. There are too many people who wake up on a Sunday morning who say they follow Jesus Christ, but the first question isn't, which service am I going to be in? It's, what am I going to do today? And church is an option. It is not an option. And I think he would drive out our pathetic excuses that keep us from worship. I think he would clean out our prejudices. Jesus literally meant to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. How are we doing with that? How are we doing with that? Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. I'm not sure I agree with Socrates. I would say the uncommitted life is not worth living. When are we going to commit ourselves to loving our neighbors as ourselves? When will we quit being so obsessed with what is mine that we fail to ask, what is the need of my neighbor? And we respond joyfully. I read a true story about a beggar